right, welcome everyone. Happy New Year. Danielle, can you mute Steve? Because there's a lot of feedback there.
Yeah, one sec.
I think you'll find out it's not me.
We'll find the culprit.
Thank you. Happy New Year, everyone. This is Kristen Vincent, Chair of the Westborough School Committee. Today is Wednesday, January 6, 2021, and I call the meeting of the Westborough School Committee to order. Thank you for joining us this evening at this remote live stream school committee meeting. Due to the impacts of the COVID-19 virus, some aspects of the open meeting law have been suspended. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Westborough School Committee is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceeding as provided for in the order. Town officials and Westborough TV have worked together to hold this meeting via televideo conference and broadcast it as such on Westborough TV's government channels, Verizon 28 and Charter 192, and streamed online on the Westborough TV YouTube channel for persons who would like to listen to or view this meeting while in progress. Any votes we take this evening will be roll call votes due to the remote participation. If you would like to speak at a school committee meeting during the citizens request portion of this meeting, please email your request to school-committee@westboroughk12.org. Special thank you to Westborough TV for covering the broadcast tonight. And as a reminder, a recording of this meeting can be accessed from the Westborough TV website or their YouTube channel at any time after the meeting. We have with us tonight Superintendent Amber Bach, Assistant Superintendent Dr. Daniel Mayer, Director of Finance and Administration Irene Oliver, Steve Durrett, Vice Chair of the Westborough School Committee, and School Committee members Sarah Dulay, Lisa Edinburgh, and Raghu Nandan, our Student Representative Kyla Kamugu, our Recording Secretary Jen Benton, and Daniela Carrillo is here for a citizen's request. And we have staff from Westborough TV handling the live stream and the recording of this meeting. So I will quickly review our agenda. We'll begin with an approval of minutes from December 16th, 2020 regular session. Then we'll have the superintendent's report and then reports from the assistant superintendent and the director of finance and administration. We'll have individual school committee member reports, building project updates, and then we do have a citizen's request tonight. And then under our COVID-19 impact update, we have a few things, data dashboard review, an update on the COVID grant financials, a discussion of the state SLT, which is student learning time, and we'll bring closure to the program switches, so students switching from hybrid to remote or remote to hybrid. Then we'll have a vote to approve an update to policy JIH, searches and interrogations. We looked at that at our last meeting. We'll have a quarterly report, the second quarterly report from Assabet Valley Collaborative, and then we do have a need for an executive session tonight, so we'll move into that after our agenda is finished. So we will begin our meeting with an approval of the minutes, and I'd like to thank Jen Benton for the minutes that she takes at every school committee meeting. They're very clear and concise, and she gets them typed up and back to us very quickly, so thank you so much, Jen. We need to approve the minutes from December 16th, 2020 regular session. Is there a motion to do that?
I'll move to approve the minutes from December.
Thank you, Raghu. And is there a second?
I can second. This is Sarah. I'll second the minutes.
Thank you. Any discussion about the minutes? All right, we'll take a roll call vote. We'll start with Sarah.
Julie, yes.
Raghu.
Nandan, yes.
Lisa.
Edinburgh, yes.
Steve.
Durrett, yes.
And Vincent, yes. So those are approved 5-0. So I will turn it over to our superintendent for a report. Happy New Year, Amber. Welcome back.
Happy New Year. It's good to see all of you and a pleasure to welcome you to 2021. I think unequivocally, we have heard across the reach of families and community that moving into 2021 and the hope of continuing to start to see vaccination move forward such that we can all look towards a 2021 where we hope that we can return to more normalcy over time. You know that I put out several communications attempting to make sure that what we do is encourage and remind people that they are safely distancing during these 2 weeks that are provided remotely, such that you have time to get tested, you have time to make sure that you're staying close to home, and that we then have an opportunity to safely return to school following the celebration of Martin Luther King Day on that Monday, and that we would then begin seeing students again in person on the 19th. So in terms of the other work, I think we're into Wednesday of the first of the 2 weeks, and was able to hear from principals that things are going along smoothly. We do have a range of students who are receiving in-person instruction. I was able to visit some of those classes today at Armstrong as I was, heading around to schools. So I believe that the return from vacation has gone smoothly, and we welcome the next 2 weeks being productive and then back to normal in-person instruction. Most of my report is contained in the COVID update section, and with an emphasis really on the grants tonight. So I will wait to provide further detail then. So thank you.
Thanks. And Daniel, do you have anything to share now?
The one thing I want to share, I'm going to bring up on the screen, is the event that is coming up soon, the third annual Dr. Martin Luther King Community Celebration that Westborough Connects is co-hosting with the Westborough Interfaith Association and Westborough Public Schools and Central Massachusetts Connections and Faith. We are going to be doing this obviously virtually this year. And it's going to start at 11 o'clock on January 18th and go till 12:30. We're very pleased that we have a great keynote speaker, Jamal Adams, who's a poet, an activist, and the Dean of Students at Brandeis University. His theme is going to be, for his discussion, is love, inclusion, and trust, standing in my shoes, the theme for the event. And so it should be a nice event. We're really hoping to get some both community and student participation, encourage people to register. We're going to start pushing out notices about this. If you're wondering why haven't I seen it, that's because this is the first time we're making it public right now. So we're pushing out starting tomorrow morning. Everybody will get an email with this flyer and some directions on how you can register. But if you're interested in registering later tonight, you can go to westboroughconnects.org and find a registration link there. That's the only thing I have for an update right now.
Great, thanks. And I just saw it pop up today as an event on Facebook, and there's also a link there to the registration site, so people can also find more information about it there. Great, looking forward to that. Yeah.
Yep.
Irene, do you have anything to share now? I know you have some info later.
I do have info later, so I'll save it for then. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move into our school committee member reports. So we'll start with Kyla. Happy New Year, Kyla. Welcome back.
Happy New Year.
Thanks. Do you have anything to share about the schools?
Yes, I do have messages from 2 principals, so I'll just get to that. The Hastings principal said that Hastings learning is going great and students are familiar with the structure on Fridays and the weekdays, and they have adopted nicely. And from the FAILS principal, she is grateful to the FAILS community and their tremendous support on the wrapping paper donations in support of the veterans. And as well, students have jumped back right into the remote model as building projects continue, and look forward to taking staff members on the tour of the worksite. At the high school, remote has been an easy transition from the holidays, and most people are looking forward to in-person days, while the Friday half days have been a real breather for everyone.
Great. Thank you, Kyla. Happy New Year. And Sarah, anything tonight?
I do not have anything to report tonight.
Okay. Raghu.
Yes, one report about the climate action plan that is currently being developed by Sustainable Westborough. and they are going to hopefully give a presentation on once it's finalized. But there are elements in those plans that I was glad that we already incorporated some of those elements, like energy efficiency in the buildings. At least we all know with the new changes, and some of the goals that I would like to discuss at some point of time is the tree and open space management and waste management in our schools, and hopefully we can do a better job of that. That's my word on that.
Thank you. Thanks for the update. And if there's something you want to put, on the agenda officially that we need to discuss, just let me know about that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Lisa, anything?
Yes, just two quick things. One, I haven't talked about the buses lately, but in bus transportation, I just wanted to mention how incredible the communication and problem solving has been with NRT this year, and that our drivers from previous years are still all with us, and that I think that things are flowing very smoothly in that arena. So just wanted to give that quick update. And finally, at the high school, there was a newsletter that went out right before vacation that had a snippet from each of the departments. And although many of us may not have had time to read through such an extensive newsletter, it really was sort of a quick insight into each of the departments one by one that we rarely get a glimpse of. And just wanted to put a little kudos out to Brian Callahan for putting that out to his community. It was, really well done. Thank you. That's all.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, that email communication was long, but really a great little peek into what's happening up at the high school. So thanks, especially with the curriculum. Steve, do you have anything now, or do you want to wait till building reports?
Well, I'll do it in two pieces.
Okay.
We're in communication with GGD, that's the mechanical engineer who got us to the point where we were out to bid twice before for the sprinkler system at Hastings. And, as a result of our anticipation of a positive vote at town meeting, we're beginning that process again so we can bring to the town meeting what the true cost would be with firm bids in hand when we get to town meeting in March. So that process is starting again. And I'm sure Irene has other things to say about other projects that are also beginning their process in the pipeline for the school system. I'll speak to the fails. I guess if it's next, then I'll speak to it next.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Yep. Because I just have one thing I want to share, and then we'll get to that. So for my report, I just wanted to briefly touch base about some concerns I saw on social media, and selectmen reached out to me also to ask some questions about the lights at the high school track. So I thought this would be a great time just to remind everyone about the guidelines that we follow in the winter for lights at the high school track area. So the full field lights are typically on after school in the winter for practices, for sports practices. So believe it or not, kids are still practicing sports outside. So indoor track sometimes goes outside when the weather's good, and the ski team uses the track area and the turf for dry land practice. They're not always skiing over at Ward. And this year there's also pending a fall 2 sports season that's actually scheduled for February and March, which will be for football. So they're going to need the lights, and everyone knows it gets dark around 4:30. So the lights will be on for practices, and then typically around like 5:45, the main field lights turn off, and just 2 lights on each of the 4 poles remain on for access to the track, and they stay on until 8 p.m. for community use. So there are regularly at least 5 or 6 people there walking and jogging on the track every night after work, and there are kids practicing sports. I know our kicker for the football team was down there practicing the other night. And we feel during a pandemic, more people are not comfortable working out at their gym, going inside to a gym. And so we feel like this is a great option, give people a safe place to work out, well lit, easy to see where you're walking versus the streets that might be icy or not as well lit. As part of the guidelines, we turn off the lights when the track becomes covered with snow and ice and it's unusable. And we missed the first night of our first big snowstorm because we're out of practice on that. But then we were able to turn off the lights for several nights after when the track was covered with snow. And the lights were off during this vacation break that we just had. Just for everyone's information, the track lights are LED, and we only spend on average about $150 each month for this community resource. And we often will use gate fees to offset this cost, and we offer it back to the community as a service. So any questions, concerns, feedbacks about lights at the high school, you can email school-committee@westboroughk12.org. And just as a reminder, when this project was first proposed, the community wanted access to it. And so I encourage everyone to use the track in the evenings. If you want to bundle up and head on out there and go for a walk, it's a safe place to jog and exercise. It's well lit, it's flat, it's usually dry, and a good place to walk and hang out. And I even know our superintendent sometimes is down there in the evening walking the track and clearing her head. So just wanted to give that update for the community.
Yeah, I would just add to, and I was there the other night, and there were about 5 people working out, and it was about 7 o'clock when I was there. I do think that as an important part of that renovation project, when we were working with the community, was a lot of discussion around the fact that it's a gem for the community, not just for high school use. And in resurfacing it and providing a quality setting, I think there were a lot of people that were very pleased that they felt that it was available to them as a community member. There's active walkers accessing the high school grounds all the time. They even walk on the upper field as well. I think it is a site that's gaining more and more use, which was something that we celebrated and felt good about. I do understand that it's important that we continue to stay in close relationship with our neighbors and make sure that they feel that they understand that with a range of constituencies, we're really trying to meet the needs, not just of our students, but of the broader community. And I think it's a service that we have really wanted to provide. And I do think emphasizing that the minimal cost is really absorbed, not hitting town taxes, but through gate fees and other offsets as a give back to our community. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for adding to that. All right, so we'll move on to building project updates. And Steve, you want to share about Fales construction?
Yeah, Fales is basically on schedule, although we're doing a schedule review to speak to that before the end of the month. So it's a detailed overall everything, how we're doing and where we're going, and what are the consequences of the schedule as we see it towards the the beginning of school in the fall. So that's ongoing. We'll hear about that later on this month. For those who drive by it and have a look at it, you can see that there's steel framing now from the north end of the building headed south on the school side. The north end has been framed. They're beginning to provide paneling to do that. And of course, the struggle now is to try to get as much of that done so we can close in the building to begin for real the internal development of the school petitions, etc. You also will notice that the roofers are continuing to close in on getting the roof properly weatherproofed, and for those that don't particularly understand, I guess, how the roof is designed, the south side, which is the sunny side, is where the solar panels will go. The north side of those crenellations, I guess I would call them, is where the skylights will be, so that the attempt in the design was to get as many of the rooms inside the building with direct light from the outside. And so a lot of that stuff is happening now, and the trades are beginning work to hang a conduit and other stuff from the ceilings above. And so, the work will continue to pick up with different trades. And to my knowledge, everything is working fine with the people who drive in and now park off of the ball field area near the town reservoir. And so far, so good. And I guess to follow with what Lisa said, our bus service is doing yeoman's work in that effort as well, ferrying the construction workers from that parking area to work and then back to their cars. And it seems that everything is going well. And we look forward to that to continue. So that's my story.
Great, thanks, Steve. Yeah, you can really see the shape of the roof there. It's not your traditional flat roof school, so it's an interesting shape over there coming up out of the hill.
Yeah, it was done that way so we could maximize the surface area of the solar panels. And I guess just to speak to that, our effort was to design the roof with as many solar panels on as we could, with the idea that not only do we supply the electric needs for the building itself, but that we have excess generation which we can direct that the value of that generation in terms of dollars and cents to offset other power bills for other school buildings in the district. Yeah, so far so good, I guess. It seems to be working out.
Yeah, it's a clever design. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So next on our agenda, we have a citizen's request. And just as a reminder, we have a policy regarding citizens' requests. And some important pieces of this policy include that each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes to present their material. And public comment at this meeting is not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between individuals and the school committee. It's an individual's opportunity to express an opinion on issues within the school committee's authority. And written comments longer than 3 minutes can be presented to the presiding chair before, after, during the meeting. So Daniela, you're welcome to send me in writing any additional comments, which I can share with the committee to better inform us on the opinions you'd like to express. So welcome, Daniela. You can unmute yourself and just state your full name and your home address to begin, and then you can start. So welcome.
Daniela Carrillo. I am at 7 Westminster Way, Westborough. I have 2 children in Vales Elementary School, kindergarten. And I was happy to see that el 6 de enero, el Día de los Reyes Magos, was recognized by the school and by the superintendent. And as I informed her in writing, I just wish that Mexico wasn't always associated with the Aztecs, and it said the Aztec nation of Mexico. And I just find that very insulting. The Aztecs didn't arrive till 1310. They actually were only there for 200 years. They were mercenary. They came from the United States, what is now the United States and Utah. If you were to speak about Mexico as a place, you might speak of it most accurately as Mayan. As far as the languages that are spoken there, Nahuatl is a language that is spoken, but there are far more Mayan languages that are spoken in Mexico, and there's far more area covered by other people. And it is now La Raza. It's a mixture of many different groups of people, and people recognize that far more. And I think most Mexican people would have been insulted by it being referred to as an Aztec nation. Also, and I've spoken with Peruvian friends about this, and they agree, Pizarro was a genocidal mass murderer, and having him given credit for Three Kings Day is it's not something that should be done. He was truly, he walked up to the Inca ruler, cut off his arms and legs, and said, I now control your country. And anyone that said no, he slaughtered. And as with most Spanish conquistadors, managed to slaughter a lot. If you want any background on this, Guns, Germs, and Steel does a good job. Las Venas Abiertas de America Latina, the open veins of Latin America. And I would just like something recognized so people understand that in writing to the community, and especially to myself, so my daughters understand that that's just not who we are. In addition, I just wanted one other request. If I could have a table done of the percentage of students by race and ethnicity, which you can actually find on the DESE website, but current data, and then the percentage the same for certified administrators and the same for certified teachers, just that fall into each race and ethnicity category. That's all.
All right, thank you for your feedback, and I have made note of your request, so we will follow up with you. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Kristen, can I comment?
Sure.
I agree with our speaker. Having worked in Mexico and having had the opportunity to travel around Mexico, Mexico City, also in effect following U.S. history in regards to Mexico and obviously ancient, well, it isn't ancient, but historical history in regards to the Spanish conquistadors, etc. I hardly agree with her comments, and in fact am surprised that we have a mismatch as much as it appears in regards to what we're speaking about versus what has happened in Mexico and the country itself. I learned a lot of things in my construction career while I was working there, and given that their society has to deal with issues of both availability of money to build the projects they do, as well as the structure of the government and how it reacts to the people, is also a very interesting thing to understand. I've worked with a Mexican national now for about 10 years on different projects in Mexico, and construction projects, and they are quite different in the way you approach them, and I've always been in awe as to how many of those projects are conducted with just labor, without the ability to use heavy equipment, because in many cases the populace can't afford it. Also, the economics of the ability of individual citizens to be able to get money to build houses, etc., is quite a bit different in Mexico than it is in the United States. And so I think Mexican history is quite interesting. It has been to me. And, I certainly agree with her comments and hope that we can do better. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate your perspective, as always. Thank you. Thanks. Okay, so we're going to move on in our agenda to our COVID-19 impact updates, and there are several agenda items under that. So I will turn it over to Amber and Daniel for this portion.
Thank you very much. So we're going to focus on a couple core areas, a little bit different tonight for you in terms of the COVID update. Underneath the agenda, we always try to hold all the items that we know are updates specific to the issues that we're dealing with this year that hopefully won't be a continual part of our repertoire. I would say first about the dashboard, we need to put out a communication probably tomorrow, which will summarize any cases that occurred during the 10 days of vacation. We received that complete summary. We'll push that out tomorrow, and that will bring us to baseline until we return. And at the end of this week, we have no current cases that have been called in since the start of school. So I'll put out an update tomorrow, which kind of brings us up to date, and then we'll track it from there as we do and keep that dashboard current. I want to move into the other major areas of focus tonight, which is to really look at the financial update and the impacts of the instructional models that we're working under. And Irene is really going to step you through. We got a lot of late developing news on the grants and the status of those being able to roll over to the middle of June or July of 2021. And that is exceptionally good news. I don't know that we're getting more money, but it does mean that the money and the finances that had come forward through the CARES grant will extend beyond the December 31st deadline, where we were feeling really we had our back to the wall on some of those cost impacts. So I think it'd be helpful at this point, knowing that, for Irene to go ahead and move into presenting to you the current status of the major grants that we've been given access to and where we are with expenditures, and take your questions so that we can continue to keep you updated on the financial impacts of the crisis. So I'll turn it over to Irene.
Thank you, Amber. Daniel, are you able to bring that up for me?
I am.
So there's a summary here where you've seen this before, the different grants that we've been given. So I'll just briefly go over these grants. So we had the reopening grant, CF CVRF, which was $849,150,000. And so that has been expended fully. We had an ESSER grant, which is summer stipends for training and case screening. We fully expended that. That was $80,519,000. We then had a remote learning technology essentials grant. RLTE was the acronym. That's $7,998. We fully expended that. And each of these grants, the end date was to be done by December 30th, which we fulfilled. As Amber had indicated, we then received notice this past week that the CVRF, the reopening grant, was extended until June 30th of 2021. However, we did our due diligence in spending that money, which we had enough expenses, more than enough to expend against that grant. So while it's coming late and generous that we could expend it, later, it's just a little too good, too late, so to speak. So that money has been expended. We don't know if we'll be getting more funding out of this latest stimulus package that will piggyback upon the CVRF grant. So the next line item that you will see under that highlighted blue area is $130,875. So we've received notice from the legislature that that's been allocated to us out of that stimulus package, but there may be more money above and beyond that. We don't have any language on process or logistics or any guidance on how to expend it from the state ANF. We thought that we would get something by now, but everyone's eager. All districts are eager to find out about this. And on my listserv, I see it every day. Everyone's wondering, have you heard? Have you heard? But no one's heard anything. So that's good news that we have additional funding, because we've had to have additional services to fulfill our remote learning beyond December 30th. So we will need that. So stay tuned for further on that. And then as you jump, the other line items are just our entitlement grants. They're just a summary of what we normally get every single year. So if you jump down to the next area of blue, FEMA and CARES. So those two grants they're not, so to speak, direct grants. They're funds allocated to the town for services across the, both school and the town for the purpose of, the COVID. There are strict guidelines for FEMA, so we don't necessarily qualify so many expenses against that. But the CARES Act has more, there's not as many restrictions. So as I go through some of the other tabs on this folder, a lot of these expenses will come off of what we've already expended and flow over to the Town CARES Act. So one thing you need to know is that the CARES Act is a reimbursable grant. So what that means is we don't get the money directly. We expend it, the town submits a report, and then the state does their paperwork and puts their, Smith's wording on it and submits it. And hopefully when it comes back, everything we submit, the funds will come to the town and fulfill all the expenses that we've submitted towards that. So we have to be careful, and we have to be very diligent about what we put against it. And we have to have proper documentation, and it's a lot of work. It really is. So Daniel, if you go to the 113 tab. So what I've given you in the summary is just what I'm giving you now on the tabs is, drilling down from all of the summary. So each of these are going to look a little different because it's just a snapshot of what we give to the state when we apply for the grant. So if you go down further, Daniel, you'll start to see the detail. There you go. So if you want to drill into this yourselves and look at it in detail, it just gives you the detail on how we delineate how we're going to spend on these individual grants. How many times the rate per hour, and then the total amount, and then it gives you a description, and then it gives you a total amount. So if you go further to the right, I'm not sure if this tab gives you a detail on expenses. Does it? No, I don't think this one does. But if you want to, you can go through this. This was
the 80,000. That was the early curriculum planning money and the case screening modification. This is actually Daniel's grant, and was expended during summer and then early into the fall. So there's just a brief snapshot for you, and it's not a lot of detail involved.
Right, and if you go down further, you can see more detail. But I don't want to bore you with the details, but if you want to look at that in more detail, you can see that. So the 117, 118, that is the $7,998 grant for technology, and this is primarily for hotspots for remote learners. Those that we learned didn't have access. So on the right, this is the one I was talking about on the right-hand side there. You can see the detail on how we expended it. It's all hotspots. And this is not the only grant that we put expenses against for hotspots. We found that a lot of families did not have access to the Wi-Fi, and so we supplied them with these hotspots. And so this is a reoccurring expense. And this expense went until the end of December. And so we fully expended this easily, quickly. And so, Danny, if you go to 102, on the right there again, this is the $849,150,000 grant. And so this was a direct grant to us for reopening. And I spoke about this before, and there was a budget put in there as to where we thought we would expend it. What you're seeing here now is where we actually expended it, and it's fully expended. So if you want to know, we $241,415,000 was in substitutes. $3,500 was the tech teacher stipends, where they spent a tremendous amount of extra work. We had outdoor classrooms of 60, where we had to put card readers in there for them due to COVID restrictions, 67,270. So I won't bore you with all of these details, but all of this is COVID related, and it's very justifiable, and it's been reportable. And in fact, I've put in an amendment based upon what we thought we would budget, based upon the categories where we actually expended, and they totally approved it. So everything's on the up and up and approved, and we're good. So I think that our auditors will be just fine with this. So on the FEMA CARES tab, so this is the one where the town reports based upon expenses, and then we're hoping that we get the money back to offset our expenses. So in the top portion is the FEMA, and that's the portion that's very restrictive. And so far, just on the school side, we've reported $189,804,000. So I haven't seen anything else so far that we can report on that. However, if I remind you, this is the most recent knowledge that we can extend these grants to December 2021. So we have a full calendar year to expend against it. However, the town also is expending against this grant. So we've been working very closely with them to determine what are the needs across the town, both the school district and the town departments, to see where we can balance the expenses and see what's the best use of these funds. So the other part of this is the CARES Act, and the same thing. As you can see, there's more expenses against this. That's because, as I indicated, there's more flexibility as to what we can put against it. And so far, we've applied just under $333,000. So between the two, we're looking at over $500,000 against these two grants. And so they're not very quick to give us a response as to what we're going to get back yet. It's a reporting that's done quarterly by the town. And like I indicated, it's very detail oriented. It's a lot of work on so many levels of departments in order to get these funds. But we're spending it. And I should note that I'll wait until we get to the next couple of tabs. The $130,000 grant tab. Are you able to? Yeah, there we go. So 130,875. This is what we indicated on the recent stimulus package that they indicated we would be getting. We haven't gotten validation on the exact amount. We've not gotten validation on how we can spend it. The language that we're getting, hearsay, is that it's similar to how we're expending like the CARES Act. It's just added money that will be coming direct to the schools. It's not one of those reimbursement grants that I spoke about with the FEMA and the CARES. So we've already budgeted and allocated some funding against that, that we know that we're going to need past the December 30th deadline that we thought we were held against, but we already used the other funding. Now we need this funding for that. So we have 2 weeks remote in January. We have 2 new temp tutors we need for remote, and then we have to offset a long-term sub grade 5 in January through June. So that would leave us with $10,961 balance, which I'm sure we'll use. Not knowing what's coming up, I'm sure we're going to use that. So Danielle, if you can go to the next tab. There's one more tab, I believe. There we go. So this is the one I wanted to talk about earlier. So this is a bit detailed, but Amber and I wanted to provide this to you. When we secured a remote learning location for teachers and then to expand it to other communities beyond what was, the demand on our community, the director of community ed put together a projection on what he thought, based upon what he thought the need might be, and based upon what community ed services they provide. And so at the top here, you'll see one column, and I think, Danielle, if you go up just a little bit more, you'll see the title. There's where it says program schedule. That column there is what was the original projection before we secured TeamWorks. And TeamWorks is the location where we provide the academy for remote learners. And so the following column is what currently is happening between September and the end of December. So as you can see, when we go down the spreadsheet, it's significantly lower than what we had projected. And so there's also an assumed January to June column as to based upon September to December actuals. So that's been adjusted downward as well. And then that gives you a total on what we expect expenses will be. And then at the very bottom, what the income will be. Now, there's also been discounts to families of need and those that are just, they just need to be learning and cannot afford it. And so there's those discounts. So that's been significantly lowered as far as income. So it looks as though compared to what was originally projected.
Irene, you muted yourself there. You need to unmute again.
You know what, my hand, I talk with my hands and I hit it, I'm sorry. So what it looks like is that we're projecting a loss of $421,554. However, because of the CARES Act that I spoke about with the town reimbursement, we're able to apply $210,000 of the licensing fee for Teamworks, the monthly licensing fee, against that CARES Act. So that offsets that loss. And then what we're hoping is that all, if not some of the remaining amount of the licensing fee, which would be $250,000 more, would be offset with the CARES. But like I said, we have to work with the town and see what the balance is between the departments to see if that money is available to apply towards it.
So just to point of emphasis to kind of step in here. So early days on this is, we do projections like this all the time and they move across the span of the year. And I think we knew that when we planned this, that we would absorb some of the costs and knew that we'd be able to put some against grants. I imagine this number is going to continue to move around, but Irene and I are starting to project it. And so we'll track it and we're just giving you a snapshot of how we do that. And then what we applied against the initial loss for the fall for the CARES. And we knew you would ask the question, well, what would be the other losses? I don't know that those will come to fruition. And we knew we would absorb potentially some of that cost anyway, using some community ed funds. And we knew we were offering it at a really reduced cost. So there's definitely pieces for us to pick up in this cost. So you're seeing all of it now. And then we'll keep you posted on, well, it's posted as, I don't know, I wouldn't term it as a loss. We knew we would be absorbing some of the costs. So what we want to do is anticipate what can we recover through grants, and then what will we be carrying through community ed, and then the payment plans that we do get with people. So we're there for now. I wanted to make sure that that whole number will move, and we'll keep you updated when we do the rest of these financials as we move through the remainder of the year. And now that we have, and again, Irene spoke about it, when you looked at the CARES grant, you saw the initial salary. The most substantial cost offset that we have to place against CARES is the real celebration is the anticipation that that second chunk of salary that we anticipated we would need to put forward as a warrant article will potentially be paid down by town meeting against the CARES grant, such that that article could be passed over. So I think that's the part that we thought it was important to put in front of you tonight, and know that we'll start working with Leah to make sure that the submission of those funds would basically continually lower the cost of that potential free cash article until it would be hopefully passed over. And I do anticipate, although we haven't had a direct sit down with Leah to start to look at any town impacts against the CARES grant, we're assuming that they will be able to absorb that salary amount, is kind of our projection as of now. So I'm not sure that there's an action to change the warrant article yet, but I'm just forecasting it forward for you. Irene, back to you. Sorry.
No, thank you, Amber. So, we'll be working with the town. We'll anticipate what we can put against it. As far as community ed, we do have, a little bit in there that we can offset with it. If we need to. We'd like to not do that because they were hoping to replenish their equipment. Although, like everyone, maybe this isn't the year that we do that. And if we have to, we dig into that funding for this. So it's one of those things where we need to look at the balance, and there's, it's a balancing act. It's not easy.
Yeah, Irene, I have a question. I heard from the 900 billion stimulus bill that 78 billion is dedicated towards K through 12 schools. Is the 250,000 you're anticipating, is that part of that 72, 78 billion that went through, or can we expect a little bit more than what? Is this all set in place, and if something comes through from that, that's something that's good?
So the recent stimulus, is that what you're talking about?
Yes, recent.
So that's the thing that we're trying to find more information about. Most business managers and superintendents, and nothing's coming out from A&F yet. We're eagerly waiting to find out. So I don't have that answer for you, unfortunately.
I mean, I know it's too premature, but we could, in reality, we could be expecting some more grants from out of that, because $78 billion is a lot of money.
Right, you would expect so. Part of that, I believe, is also higher ed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know for sure, but I thought I heard that.
Okay. It could be. It could be.
Well, it also delineated a fair amount to private schools and charter schools. So I think, again, we have to wait and see how it all plays out. But we certainly are as hopeful as you are.
Yeah. Yeah. So this $250,000 from CARES Act has got nothing to do with the other chunk of money that could potentially be coming.
Correct.
Right. This is simply allowing the first tier of money that we received that should have been expended by the close of the year to extend until June, July of 21. So it's allowance that the money we have can be expended for a while.
Got it. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Hopefully we don't have to go through the warrant article.
Yeah, I totally agree. Other questions? As again, just an update to give you a picture of how Irene and I are tracking this and working with the town and managing expenditures such that we have very limited, hopefully, impact of loss from the pandemic.
I have a quick question about the actually what's up on our screen right now. In the blue, are those the grants that are specifically geared towards those additional grants for this period of time of COVID? Whereas the white, the title,
those are other entitlements.
Those are the normal ones we typically would have. Okay.
Right. You're looking at her master spreadsheet where she keeps all the grants, and she just highlighted the ones that are COVID related.
And I guess my other question is, are we looking for income or revenue streams within TeamWorks to mitigate those costs at all? Are there?
Oh, of course. Yeah, that's like an ongoing project. I mean, I think, again, we anticipated potential use. We were in the crisis mode planning. I think Brian, as a director, is very creative and will continue to look at ways to increase attendance revenue and opportunities. But, it all gets weighed against people's individual need for different level of programming.
Okay. Yep. That was all of my questions.
Great. So if there aren't any others, Kristen, I think we would move on to the next portion of our agenda, if you're good with that.
Yeah, that's fine. I just want to say thank you to Irene and all the staff keeping track of all of this, because I know it's a lot of coordination just within the school department, but then coordination with the town financial team. So thank you so much just for staying on top of that and putting all those extra hours into keeping track of that.
Thank you. It is a non-moving target.
Yeah. So we're going to move on to the student learning time.
Yeah, so I'll turn over to Daniel. I mean, he and I are working on this. We talked about this at the last meeting, and I guess, they've released, he had updated you on what the current status was, and I'll turn it back to him and let him kind of step you through where we are.
Okay. So I think, there's a lot of moving parts here, but basically, for context, the state came out with guidance recently, like a few weeks ago, about what they expect in terms of amount of time students should be having direct connection with their teachers this year. And before they came out with the actual numbers of what our target should be, they actually asked us for what are we currently doing. So backing up into October, November, I guess it was November, they said, like, here's a request for show us at 4 different grade levels, 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th, how many hours of instruction your students are getting in person, online, but when you're online, being synchronous at the same time with your teacher, or asynchronous, so at home instruction that you're doing without working directly with a teacher. And then all of the districts across the state submitted their data, and then they did a big reveal of like who wasn't meeting the target that we didn't know we were supposed to meet a couple of weeks ago or a week ago. So basically, they came out and they put up a website, and then you can look us up. You can look up all of the different districts, and you can see like who's on their bad list and who's on their good list. And basically, they've talked about the target should be 35 hours of direct instruction, whether it be in person or online, over a 2-week period that students should get. And then, so you can look up any school district in the state and see where they are. We're currently at 30 hours. And again, the target's 35. So we're 5 hours shy. And if you look up a lot of what we call our benchmark districts, the districts that are around us, like they're very high caliber academic districts: Northborough, Southborough, Shrewsbury, Hopkinton, Newton, Belmont, Lexington. Like if you look at them up and see where they are, we're pretty much where they are, which is, and in some cases, so we're all hovering around 30 hours. The state would like us to be at 35, but let me just be clear that 30 hours is in-person hours and online hours together. So if you look at our in-person hours are actually at the high end compared to a lot of districts. So, there's different ways to look at the data. I don't think we're in a very, it's not a dire position, but we need to respond to the state. They're asking for us to give justification for why we are at the place that we're at, which is the place that we went to because we didn't have any guidance from the state as to where we should be. But so this is now where they basically are letting us appeal and say why it is that we think we're okay being at 30 rather than 35. Either that or we have to make some changes in our hours. Now, we do have a number of factors that make our appeal very strong. They made it clear if you're doing online direct instruction with vulnerable subgroups of students or bringing students in person for 4 days or more a week, then that would count towards your appeal. And we do a lot of that. We work with our ELL students, our special needs students, our Math Plus students, our reading support students. Every day when they're at home, we have targeted small group instruction going on. In addition to that, we have a strong 4-day program for a number of students who come in. The other thing they said that they would consider in the appeal is parent satisfaction. And if you can show that you have parents that are satisfied with what it is that you're doing in your district, and we do have that data, as you know. We have a very, very high response rate. We have a lot of parents who chimed in. The vast majority were very pleased with what we're doing. Number 3, they say, as a criteria for an appeal is whether or not you have high participation rates. And we also know that we have very high participation rates. Each of our schools keeps a spreadsheet of literally a handful of students that we're highly concerned about that just don't seem to participate. Whether it be online or coming in regularly or something like that. But so we're putting together the appeal right now. It's due on Friday. Or is it due tomorrow, Amber? I think it's due tomorrow. And then we will hear by early next week whether or not the appeal has succeeded. If the appeal hasn't, if they don't accept the appeal, then we'll go to stage 2, which would be, looking at adjusting our hours somehow. But we have put together a lot of complicated programming to work to allow our staff to function in a very rigorous, robust way to meet the needs of our students. And I think what we have in place is really high quality. And that seems to be the feedback we've gotten from the parents, from teachers, from parents and teachers who know other communities and how they're doing. And people frequently say we're a model for how things should be done. So I feel good about where we're at. I don't like being on the state's list of not meeting their standard, but I think there's a rationale that is strong for keeping our programming as it is, and I do hope that our appeal will get approved by them.
So we'll complete that. Yeah, so thank you, Daniel. And we'll complete that. Well, actually, I was literally, I feel like I'm typing while we talk. I'm trying to work on both while we get done. The pressure's there. I think that we need to complete the waiver, reflect on it tomorrow, run it through leadership, and then submit it, and then stand by it and see how we do. We'll keep you updated, and then we'll plan for next steps, and we'll keep you in the loop. So I think it's an important update and one we take very seriously. But they have said they will turn around pretty quickly on the waiver process. So we'll hope to hear soon.
Yeah. Hi, Daniel. Just so that I understand, the appeal is to continue what we've been doing with 30 hours going forward. It's not to make up the 5 hours deficit that we have. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So they're not asking us to make up those 5 hours.
They might.
They are clear that they kind of chose the area of focus where they have leverage around the mandate, which is time and learning. So, what they very strategically chose an area where time and learning is a state requirement, and therefore they selected that as their area of focus. And they do indicate that districts need to be compliant with the hours expected. If your waiver is not, if they look at your waiver and say what you're doing makes sense to us, keep going, we're fine. If they say you need to add the time, we have to add the time because we are required to complete the number of hours that they say. So it doesn't look back, but it definitely looks forward from the 19th.
Okay, it's not like all of a sudden for the rest of the year, we need to cover 40 hours to make up that 5 hour deficit.
No.
I mean, never say never with how they're right now. No, as of now, no. Never say never. I didn't think they would weigh in January with a set of mandated guidelines this late in the game. So, they've really left people high and dry in terms of, proper response on this.
Yeah, got it.
So I just wanted to bring up, I was reading the report, and I just wanted to bring up that this is not a reflection upon our teachers. We think they're doing a great job. They're working really, really hard. They're teaching to the model in which it was created, last summer, without a lot of guidance from the state. And it has to be really clear that that is not what this is about. This seems to be more about the state sort of reviewing their own guidelines a little late into the game and recognizing that maybe they should have given us some guidance earlier on. And it could be tough. It could be tough on how do you turn that around. But in the meantime, we're just going to do the best we can, you know, and you guys are doing great. You know, I appreciate you doing the hard work of submitting the appeal.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Lisa, because I find this very frustrating, and this is guidance we should have had in August. And so we would have created a model in compliance to that, but we created the best model we could given the structure of our own school community because we were allowed to do that. And so I just find this really frustrating, and it also bothers me that so much of Amber and Daniel's time is now eaten up filling out all these forms and things when there's a lot more other business to be done here in our district. So I just want to be on record to say that I find this frustrating. And of course we will do the work to be, do the application for the waiver and if need be in compliance, but it's extremely frustrating. All right, on that note, let's move on to the next bullet point, which is the closure on the program switches. So thinking about students that have switched from remote to hybrid or hybrid to remote.
Yeah, and I just want to note that we did exceptionally well with this, with the support and guidance and emphasis that you helped us provide to families. The principals and the building level leadership did a great job to work with Daniel to organize that transition, and the impact was very minimal in terms of problems for us. We were very concerned that it would disrupt instruction. Now, we were able to manage that. We did hire one additional long-term sub to provide instruction at Mill Pond because there were enough requests and we would have had to break apart other classes. And that we felt kind of was a violation of the way we provide instruction. And so I think because it was the only area where we were going to need to do that in order to make the switches. We did provide for that, applied against COVID funds. The $130,000 that Irene detailed to you is right now carrying that anticipated cost. So that's where I placed that in anticipation of getting those funds. So, you know, I think, and Dane, I don't know if you want to do numbers on switches. I mean, just to give them a sampling of how many people ended up moving around, or I didn't have to prepare it. But.
No, and I didn't, but I did refer to it at the last meeting. I'm sure you remember the numbers very clearly. It wasn't a lot, and that, you know. So I mean, I could try to bring up the file, but I'd be fumbling.
No, it's good. I just want to be clear too that they're making those switches at the building level. We haven't received feedback that there's concerns around that, and I feel that the model continues to be responsive to families, while also holding them accountable to the plans they put in place and then helping to have them make that workable for their family.
Can we just get a general view of which direction they went in and how it impacts anyone that's already in their programs? You know. Well,
they moved. There was a mix of moving both ways. I would say we had slightly more requests to go to remote at Mill Pond. But in general, there was like a little bit of movement back and forth to the high school switches, to Gibbons switches, and to, I think, the few switches that were requested at elementary, which were really, really small. And in those cases, the request to remote was absorbed, in some cases, by having them join a class. Remember Daniel detailing this, with another remote teacher at another school, but in their grade level. So we made some interesting adjustments to manage that. So the impact to individual teachers and the structure for students was mitigated by being able to kind of make those within class-size guidelines to move them around in such a way that they could join a class that was ready for them. So, you know, I think it was pretty much a mix, probably slightly more moving to remote, I guess I would say.
Yeah, it was definitely, I would say it was a 2-to-1 ratio.
Yeah.
Yeah. At least I could give you the numbers if you want. You know,
no, I was
offline.
More just wondering if there was an impact on the students that really didn't switch, because that was the biggest concern I think I had was those that were in hybrid or remote.
Yeah, only in the 5th grade. Only in the 5th grade, and that one, and so the impact there was the class size in the 5th grade remote sections was already up at around close to 30, and there were 3 sections maybe that were operating, and so we added a 4th section because we did not want the class sizes to be up around, over 30, and so we actually, in some ways, everybody benefited by adding the teacher. So now we've got our class size numbers much more at a level that we'd like to have. Slight disruption, though, in that some kids lost their existing teacher to move into the new teacher's classroom. So, we had a handful of 5th grade requests. We put them into the new teacher's classroom, but then we basically didn't want a new teacher just to have 7 kids. And so we took some other kids out from the other sections. And so, we worked that very carefully with the parents. We had, long conversations but given what we could have had, having one grade level impacted and just a couple of sections of that grade level, we felt very good about it.
That is not bad at all. That's extraordinary, actually. So thank you.
Yep.
And thank you to all the building principals and the teachers for making that work for those kids, helping those transitions and, sharing information and getting the communication to the families. So we appreciate all that work that went into that. Thank you. Anything else, Amber, under the COVID updates? I think that was it. Oh, you're on mute, by the way.
Yeah, a couple things here tonight, sadly. So, no, I feel like we're in good shape. I think those are the details we wanted to bring in front of you tonight, so you can move to the other 2 items, then we should be close to complete. Thank you.
All right, great, thanks. So our next agenda item is to vote to approve an update to our policy JIH on searches and interrogations. And we had looked at this policy at our last school committee meeting, and I had shared with you that the MASC had brought forth an update to this policy, but when the policy subcommittee met a couple months ago, we didn't really like the MASC updates. We just didn't feel like it did enough for us. Didn't feel like the language was strong enough. And so we reached out to John Foskett, our one of our lawyers with the firm that helps us in our district, and he agreed that the MASC language wasn't really strong enough and clear enough. So he gave us some suggestions. And so the red line version that you see here are all of his additions and actually eliminating some of the redundant language and putting in some pieces that would be stronger. And so this is what we propose to update our policy with, the language that's here now in the red language added to the black that's put in there. So just strengthening some language around definitions of like property, thinking about like student property versus school property, and just being really clear when it comes to the kind of the permissions that a staff member would have and police if they were involved, and students' rights. So I'm looking for a motion to accept this policy.
I can make a motion to accept the policy as written.
I have a question.
Hi. Yeah, sure. Kyla.
Don't move.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. So we can have discussion. Kyla, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So I'm reading the part that the searches and interrogation by police part. Mm-hmm. And it says school has legal custody of the students during the school day. So if someone were to get detained, don't they have the right not to be questioned without the presence of the legal guardian?
There is somewhere where it talks about this. I read this. Does anyone see it? Because
it says under I had a bullet 1 there, when law enforcement officials find it necessary to question students or conduct a search during the school day or periods of extracurricular activities, the school principal or their designee will be present when possible. And an effort will be made to contact the student's parent or guardian so that the responsible individual may be notified of the situation.
Okay.
Thanks. So we had a motion from Sarah, and I think Steve had seconded the motion.
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion?
I'll go with Kyla's question, which is typical practice is that the parent is present. Isn't that a typical practice?
Yes.
So I'm not, maybe I thought that at the same time as I was reading it, but
yeah, and it also depends on the range of what the issue is, and then also what the level of emergency is. So again, if we were to suspect that a student had a weapon and we've got their backpack and the police are on site, we would remain present with the student, but we would allow the search because it's the tantamount to the safety of the building and all present. If we thought there was a circumstance where a car was going to be searched or something like that, typically parents have been contacted and one of our school personnel are always present. So that there is definitely knowledge awareness. It also depends on the age of the student. If there are 18, that changes the parameters. So again, to be clear, Kyla, these are very, very rare circumstances, and we make sure to your point, Lisa, that we have people in attendance and our staff as well, and have made contact with families to update them.
And the staff members are school appointed and not at the discretion and comfort of the student.
Again,
typically it will be. Again, you're talking about it depends on what the range of the experiences are, and they're all very individual. Could be a guidance counselor, could be a teacher, it's typically administration there with the student, but it depends on the circumstances.
Questions? Any other discussion on the policy update? All right, seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. We'll start with Sarah.
Dule, yes.
Raghu.
London, yes.
Lisa.
Edinburgh, yes.
Steve.
Durant, yes.
And Vincent, yes. So that's 5-0. This policy will be updated with the updated language and put into our policy bank. And just as a reminder, all of our policies can be accessed from our school website. And if anyone's interested in some nighttime reading to put yourself to sleep, dig into those policies. Okay, so we're going to move on to our last agenda item. It's just a second quarterly report on the Absabet Valley Collaborative. So I think, Amber, you're on mute, by the way.
My screen disappeared all of a sudden. I apologize.
Still here.
I know. It's the evening. So the Asset Valley is always a public record where we're giving you an opportunity to receive an update on their fiscal health and their long-term planning, because we share both students there and we're members of the overall organizational management. So just two items of note for you, or just for the record, the financial statements for the year indicating their fiscal health overall, despite COVID and the crisis that we have, and it's attached to this for your record to look at. And the second one being the audit that they received, which was exceptionally positive, that demonstrates that they are fiscally sound from an outside party review, that come in and look at their practices and ensure that they are careful in all of their work with the funds that we help to provide through our tuitions and membership in the collaborative. Lastly, I would indicate that Irene and I spoke about the fact that actually this year there is a reimbursement from them. And Irene, I think if you could speak briefly about that, that would be good.
Yeah, so they have a policy that if they go above 25%, net revenue in their account, that the members will get an equally prorated distribution of a credit back to whatever cost center it is. And this year there was that such situation in transportation. So Westborough will get a $12,902.47 credit to the transportation account from ABC. So typically, knowing collaboratives and working for a collaborative in my past experience, is that we have a choice. We can keep it on record as a credit, or we can take it off of, and we can choose when we want to take that credit, and it can roll from year to year. Collaboratives are allowed to roll the funding from year to year, or we can just choose to take it off of the next monthly bill as a credit. So it gives us some flexibility. It's not huge, but hey, we'll take it, right? So it doesn't require a vote of any kind. We'll see where our expenses end at closer to the year end, and then decide if it makes sense to take it this year. Most likely we're going to need it. But I would recommend that we hold on to it in a credit mode at the ABC until we know where our finances are. And then when we're balancing out the records, decide then at that point. So that's all I have in that regard. But this doesn't happen all the time.
No.
I have a question.
Yep.
Could we go to the summary balance sheet, which I think is near the end of the report?
To the end of the summary balance sheet for the Assabet?
Yes.
Hold on.
While you're finding it, how often is the audit done? I was curious.
It's done annually.
Yeah. Yep.
So you're saying, is it at the end of the report, you said, Steve?
Yeah, it's pretty near the end of the report.
You have a page number for me?
I don't have it in front of me, and so we're hunting for it as well. It gives you
Irene, can you guide me to where I should go, Irene?
I don't know where he's going with this.
Well, there's a comparison of year over year, and what I read anyway was that the end of the fiscal year, or their year that was reviewed, which I think was in June, that they had a negative balance of $100,000 plus or minus. And my question was going to be if that's true, and maybe I'm misreading the balance sheet, but that's what it appeared to be. And the bad news is we're not finding the thing that I'm looking for.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it either.
Well, you can, I think.
Oh, maybe this is it. Maybe that's it. But are you talking about the OPEB? Because that's year over year.
Yeah, it was near there, I guess.
Because the OPEB is different.
Yeah, I know what that is. I may have misread it.
Okay.
Well, certainly, Steve, to your question, I mean, I'm happy to scan the report with you tomorrow and then answer any questions, or get them with explicit response from Kathy and send you an email. So we can talk tomorrow offline and I can send you the detail you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they're going to give us money back tells me I don't care about what they said in their balance sheet. So, but it's okay. I was just interested in how they did that, or maybe sometimes you do it in the reverse, and so a negative number turns out to be a positive number for us. So,
well,
anyway, I'll find it, and I'll email you that sheet and my question.
So,
thank you so much.
So the language that I read in the audit report was that it was due to less expenses and transportation due to the COVID.
Okay,
And that's,
so the net then is the savings to the Assabet Valley Collaborative as a quote, it turns out to be a positive balance. In other words, it's a negative expense.
Right.
Something like that.
Right.
That's all right. I'll find it and we can clear that up tomorrow.
okay.
Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you, Amber. That's and that's a good explanation, Irene, of what happens there with the, sometimes we get money back and sometimes we don't, but that's good to know, and good to know that there's flexibility and how we want to use that. So
I think
They could have, they could have applied that to OPEB. They could have done other things, but they missed the window to do it. So the discussion from the standpoint of the board was that, and again, they are in transition with their financial administration. And I think it cost them money and it saved us money because they didn't need to return it. They could have leveraged their planning differently. So they missed the financial window where the requirement has been exceeded for them to utilize those funds differently. So in this year we benefit, which was fine.
Yeah, and I guess this actually is proof of the transparency of the process because, as you said, they could have accounted for it as a future indebtedness or something, in effect to prepay something. And
they should have, because that's right, because they should have, because we just leased a new property. So, again, they had expenses they could have, but again, water under the bridge, we benefit this year and in all years, that's it.
Yeah, it's kind of neat to be transparent and actually protect yourself from criticism. So it works out pretty well.
Exactly.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
all right, thank you. So that brings us to the end of our agenda. As a reminder, the next meeting of the school committee will be on Wednesday, January 20th at 6 p.m. And I need a motion to move into executive session.
I can make
I move that we move into executive session for the purposes of, as noted on our agenda, and I can read it if we have to.
I think Lisa has it if she got it.
He votes. I vote to meet in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 221. I'm sorry, 2A, 21A. No.
Yep, 21A.
21A. Purpose 3, to discuss with respect to collective bargaining teachers' contracts specifically and under Mass General Law, Chapter 22, G2. Purpose 7, to review and approve executive session minutes from December 2nd.
Thank you, Lisa. Is there a second for that?
I'll second it.
Thank you. We'll do a roll call vote. Sarah?
Yes.
Grego?
Nandan, yes.
Lisa?
Edinburgh, yes.
And Vince in executive session. Thank you.
Have a good night.